In 170 AD, the most powerful man on earth sat alone in a military tent, surrounded by plague, war, and the possibility of death before sunrise. And instead of writing orders to his generals, he wrote instructions to himself. Why? Because Marcus Aurelius had discovered something almost no one alive fully understands. Your suffering is not caused first by events, but by the way your mind meets them. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. Marcus Aurelius is often imagined as a marble statue come to life. Calm, noble, unshakable. But that image hides the real drama. He did not practice Stoic philosophy from a peaceful garden. He practiced it while ruling an empire under siege. Germanic tribes pressed against Rome's borders. A devastating plague swept through the population. Political betrayal was always a possibility. His children died, his body ached, his sleep was broken. And still, in the middle of all that, he kept returning to one question: what is actually under my control? This is what makes his writing so powerful. Meditations was never meant to be published. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't branding. It was one man trying to master his own mind before his mind mastered him. That matters, because when people speak publicly, they often teach what sounds good. When they write privately, they reveal what they truly struggle to live. And what Marcus struggled with is exactly what you struggle with now. Not barbarian invasions, maybe, but uncertainty, reputation, loss, anger, exhaustion. The feeling that your peace depends on what other people do next. That is why ancient wisdom still lands like a strike to the chest. Because the tools change, but the mind doesn't. Seneca knew it. Epictetus knew it. Marcus Aurelius knew it. The core human problem has never been the world itself. It has been our interpretation of the world. And what he wrote next changed everything. He wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Read that again mentally, not because it sounds comforting, because it sounds offensive. If you've lost someone, been betrayed, humiliated, abandoned, or crushed by failure, that sentence can feel almost impossible to accept. It can sound like blame. But Marcus is not saying pain is imaginary. He's saying suffering multiplies when judgment fuses with fact. The event is one thing. Your conclusion about the event is another. You didn't get the job, fact. This proves I'm not good enough. Judgment, someone ignored your message, fact. They don't respect me. Judgment, you made a mistake in public, fact. My reputation is ruined, judgment. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think Stoic philosophy asks you not to feel. It doesn't. It asks you to stop collaborating with the story that makes the feeling unbearable. There is a hidden tyrant in most lives, and it is not your boss, your past, your parents, or the economy. It is your unexamined interpretation. Marcus Aurelius understood that perception is not passive. It is creative. It doesn't merely receive reality. It shapes the reality you live inside. This is where Stoic becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Because once you realize your mind helps construct your suffering, you lose the luxury of helplessness. You can't just say, this happened to me, therefore I must collapse. Marcus removes that excuse. And that's why modern Stoicism is often misunderstood. People turn it into productivity advice. Wake up early, take cold showers, don't complain, fine, but that's the surface. The real power of Stoic philosophy is far more unsettling. It tells you that between the world and your despair, there is a layer of interpretation you are responsible for. That responsibility is freedom, but it feels, at first, like a burden. Seneca, another giant of Stoic philosophy, said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about how much of your life has been spent fighting ghosts, conversations that never happened, rejections that never came, disasters your mind rehearsed so vividly that your body paid the price before reality even arrived. A surprising fact, your nervous system often reacts more to anticipation than to events themselves. In other words, your body is listening not just to life, but to your interpretation of life. Marcus knew this without fMRI machines or neuroscience labs. Ancient wisdom reached a truth that science keeps circling back to: perception is not decoration, it is destiny. So let me ask you something. How much of your pain right now is the event itself, and how much is the meaning you attach to it? But there's something even more shocking. Marcus Aurelius didn't just believe perception changes emotion. He believed it changes action, character. And ultimately, the world you build around yourself. Because if you interpret every obstacle as an insult, you become bitter. If you interpret every obstacle as training, you become dangerous. That's not motivational fluff. That is a different reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This might be the most quoted line in modern Stoicism and also the most watered down. People use it like a poster in a startup office. But Marcus wrote it while facing conditions that could have shattered an ordinary person. He was not romanticizing difficulty. He was reframing its function. The obstacle in Stoic philosophy is not always something you remove. Sometimes it is something you use. Delay becomes a test of patience. Criticism becomes a test of ego. Loss becomes a test of perspective. Illness becomes a test of endurance. The thing blocking your preferred path becomes the material from which a stronger self is forged. And here is the controversial part. Comfort has probably done more to weaken modern people than adversity ever did. Not all adversity ennobles. Some of it breaks people, that's true, but a life organized around avoiding discomfort at any cost creates fragility. We become outraged by inconvenience, distracted by silence, spiritually dependent on constant reassurance. Then we wonder why minor setbacks feel like identity threats. Marcus would say the problem is not that life is hard. The problem is that you expected it to be easy. An expectation is a lens, a bad one. You see this in ordinary moments. Traffic becomes an injustice. Criticism becomes persecution. Waiting becomes suffering. But why? Because your mind had already signed a secret contract with reality. Things must go my way. When reality breaks that contract, anger appears. This is where it gets interesting. The transformation Marcus offers is not from weakness to invincibility. It is from resistance to cooperation, not cooperation with evil. Cooperation with reality itself. If something has already happened, then one battle is over. Reality has moved. The only remaining battle is internal. Will you add a second layer of suffering by demanding that the past be different, or will you convert what happened into discipline, clarity, and force? That is self-improvement at its highest level, not cosmetic optimization, not becoming more impressive, becoming harder to enslave. And yes, this is personal. Because every one of us has a private obstacle we keep labeling as proof of defeat. The breakup, the failure, the year you lost, the version of you that didn't become what you hoped. But what if the obstacle is not the interruption of your path? What if it is the path? There is one more line from Marcus Aurelius that completes the picture. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Simple sentence, brutal implication. Most people spend their lives trying to control outside events. They try to manage how they are perceived, prevent all rejection, avoid all uncertainty, secure every outcome, and eliminate every threat. But life does not negotiate on those terms. It keeps reminding you that power over externals is partial at best and imaginary at worst. So what happens? Anxiety becomes the permanent tax on the illusion of control. Marcus offers another kingdom, smaller but real, the kingdom of judgment, attention, choice, response. That inner territory is the last fortress no one can seize without your permission. And if that sounds abstract, bring it down to a single day. Someone insults you, there is the event, then there is the interpretation. I've been diminished. I must retaliate. Everyone saw, but is that true? Or did your mind instantly convert sound waves into a threat to identity? Here is the emotional peak of Stoic philosophy. Freedom is not when the world finally becomes manageable. Freedom is when you no longer need it to be. That is why Marcus Aurelius could write in a war tent with plague surrounding him and still build an inner life more orderly than many people living in peace. He was not waiting for ideal conditions to become stable. He was practicing stability inside unstable conditions. Ask yourself this: if your peace depends on events obeying you, is that peace really yours? That question cuts deep, because most of what we call emotional life is outsourced sovereignty. We hand our mood to strangers, our self-worth to applause, our calm to convenience, our identity to success. Then when those things shift, as they always do, we call ourselves broken. Marcus would say you were never broken. You were merely overinvested in what was never yours to govern. This is where ancient wisdom meets modern stoicism with almost surgical precision. You don't need Rome, you don't need a toga, you don't need to become emotionless. You need to notice the moment your mind adds a verdict to a fact. That moment is the birthplace of unnecessary suffering. It is also the birthplace of liberation. And that is the revelation. Marcus Aurelius transformed reality not by changing the outer world first, but by changing the meaning through which the outer world was received. In that sense, perception is not a minor mental habit. It is the architecture of experience. Change the architecture, and the storm still comes, but it no longer owns the house. So go back to that image from the beginning. A Roman emperor in a freezing tent, surrounded by chaos, writing words to himself because he understood something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Reality hits you once, but your interpretation can hit you 1,000 times. That is the battle, not whether life will wound you. It will, not whether people will disappoint you. They will, not whether plans will fail. They will. The question is whether you will keep converting every event into a personal catastrophe, or whether you will begin, finally, to separate what happened from what you are telling yourself about what happened. Here's the challenge. For the next 7 days, catch yourself every time you say, "This is terrible, this ruined everything," or "I can't handle this." And then ask one Stoic question. Is this the event, or my estimate of the event? That single pause can change the course of a day. Enough days and it can change a life. Maybe not because the world becomes kinder, maybe not because you become numb, but because you stop handing reality extra weapons. And if you want to go even deeper, write like Marcus wrote, privately, honestly, no audience. At the end of the day, take one event that disturbed you and break it apart. What happened? What did you add? What part was fact? What part was fear, ego, memory, or projection? That is not journaling as self-expression. That is journaling as philosophical training. Most people will spend their entire lives trying to rearrange the outside world so they can finally feel okay inside. Marcus Aurelius took the opposite path. He reordered the inside, and in doing so, transformed the only reality any of us ever truly live in, the one filtered through perception. If this shifted something in your thinking, subscribe. We go deeper every week. And drop your interpretation in the comments. Do you think Stoic philosophy liberates people, or does it risk making them too detached? That debate matters, because the line between mastery and suppression is thinner than most people realize. Master your perception, or your perception will master you.